we are back. And on this trip, for the next 4 weeks, this would be the setting for our latest summer adventure. Our route will be taking us northbound through the expansive and rugged desert plains just outside of Dateland. Then, we'd continue northwest through steep mountain passes and wide open valleys as we worked our way through dry river and wash bottoms. Finally, we deal with a heavy downpour as we fought our way through rain, mud, and fog before crossing the formidable Black Mountain Range just outside of Kingman. All throughout our trip, of course, we'd be treated to historic mining and military sites, remote campsites, and beautiful terrain. No cabins, no hotels. This trip would be just us, the Jeep, and the tent as we covered over 200 off-road miles across western Arizona. Hello everybody and welcome to another AZ Off-Road Summer Special. I'm Scotty, joined as always by my cousin Daniel, and we are here at the start of the trail in Dateland, Arizona.
We are about 10 miles north of Interstate 8. We've got our date shakes out of good old Dateland, Arizona. We're about to start on one of our more ambitious trips.
Yes, so we are at the start of the trail and we're filming this a little bit earlier in the year than we normally would. Right now, the rest of Arizona is covered in snow, actually. But that's good because we're going to be cruising through the desert, which would be completely just undoable in the summertime. And that route is, of course, called the Arizona Peace Trail. The Arizona Peace Trail is a massive, nearly 700-mile off-highway vehicle route that spans 3 counties in western Arizona. It reaches from Yuma to Kingman and back, and contains a variety of climates and difficulties for all sorts of off-road enthusiasts. However, in our 5-day, 4-night adventure, it would be impossible to do the entire trail justice. But we had a plan. Our planned route would be taking us on about half of the Arizona Peace Trail route. Beginning here in Dateland in Yuma County, we would head north for the next 2 days along the eastern branch of the trail. Once past Salome, we would use a dirt connector to head northwest and meet up with the western branch of the trail near Swansea. From there, we would follow the remaining Arizona Peace Trail route north as it passes through Bullhead City and eventually goes east towards Kingman. This route would allow us to see a lot of the stuff we wanted to check out, cover a significant portion of the Peace Trail, and stay in the mostly lower elevation sections. So we're getting aired down here, but I want to talk quickly about some changes to the Jeep because this thing looks dramatically different than our southeastern Arizona special we did last year. The rear bumper is, of course, one of the more noticeable changes. Holds the tire, holds the gas, so we're no longer huffing the gas fumes inside. That's nice. And the rooftop tent is a big addition too. Daniel has yet to try that out.
It should be interesting.
So that'll be a big improvement on the way we're sleeping and setting up camp. And then there's some other little changes, but the last one is the dual battery box in the back. That kind of allows us to have a charging station for at least all of my cameras, maybe your phone.
Maybe, if I'm lucky.
If there's time. And then the air compressor is, of course, hardwired into the back.
Airing down the Jeep didn't take long, and we were shortly northbound on the trail. The trail begins alongside a massive solar farm. Not long after this, the trail made a hard right turn, crossed a wash, and continued north through the Palomas Mountains. Here, the trail really opened up as numerous tracks split off in all directions. A recent rain had left a few pretty good-sized puddles in this otherwise dry desert region. The trail remained easy and the miles rolled by quickly. Small creosote bushes and saguaro cacti dominated the barren landscape. After snaking around a large hill on our left, the trail headed in a northwesterly direction. The trail remained mostly smooth and fast-moving. At the 15-mile mark, we reached a second large hill and split off to the left to check out a building near the base of the hill. As we approached the cabin, a small group of what appeared to be Sonoran pronghorn crossed our path and made a beeline for the open desert.
We continued over to the small cabin and got out to investigate. This simple cabin was inside of a fenced area and was built by the Arizona Game and Fish Department to serve as a refuge for hunters, workers, or anyone else venturing through the area. The inside of the cabin wasn't much to write home about. A table and chairs remained indoors, while a few shelves and sink area remained in a worse state of decay. From the excessive amount of animal droppings inside and the broken windows, it was clear that this cabin hasn't been used in a little while. We closed the cabin back up and walked around the outside, where we found a small water tank and a few other cement foundations. Just east of the cabin was a small animal watering station, which is likely where our pronghorns had been before we scared them off. From the cabin, we continued back to the main trail. We headed northwest along the large volcanic hill and through a major trail junction shortly after. From here on out, the trail was far less traveled and much rockier. The surrounding landscape once again opened up as we were now in the heart of the Palomas Plain. Rugged mountains surrounded us on all sides, but were far off on the horizon, at least for now. The trail remained slower paced as we picked our line northwest through a few dry wash crossings, some of which were quite narrow. It was along this section where we passed a small group of side-by-sides, which were the first and only people we would see for the rest of the day. The miles continued to tick by.
At around the 25-mile mark, we reached another intersection in the absolute middle of nowhere. The rugged mountains to the west were part of the Kofa National Wildlife Refuge, and those to the south were part of the Tank Mountains. It was here we made an important turn to head north along a set of even lesser traveled tracks. The trail got rougher in places as we crossed numerous dry washes. The Jeep, with its tired coil springs, which was under a heavier load than normal for this trip, did scrape on a few of the more off-camber sections through the washes. We were able to remain in 4 high, however, as we continued on.
As we approached the Little Horn Mountains at around the 30-mile mark, we pulled off the side of the trail at a large rocky area to try and investigate something on foot. What we were looking for was, well, more rocks, and we found them a short distance off the main road. But these weren't just any rocks. From the ground, these large rocks, which are arranged into a series of different numbers and letters, seem meaningless. However, from the air, they tell a very different story. It is here, in what seems like a completely random location, Aztec 41 and a simple north compass marker remain inscribed into the desert floor. While slightly overgrown nowadays, these markers would have been used to help overflying military planes find their way back to base when out training in this massive and barren area. The town of Aztec sits just east of Dateland along Interstate 8, where we started our journey about 40 miles to the south. During World War II, Dateland and a few other surrounding towns housed Army airfields that were part of the Yuma Army Advanced Flying School. This isolated area would have been used to train pilots, sight guns on B-25 bombers, and provide an unobstructed area to train pilots that would fly throughout the war. The airfields were abandoned in 1957. However, the area nearby still remains in military hands today as the more modern training area of the Yuma Proving Ground, which spans an incredible 1,300 square miles.
It was cool to find and check out this easy to miss relic of the past out here in the desert. However, it was nearly 4 o'clock and it was time to continue moving. From here, the trail would get briefly rougher as we continue north. The trail continued crossing some large wash crossings. We continued to climb in elevation as the trail became quite narrow and rocky in places. Our pace was slowed along this section.
We continued to work our way through the Little Horn Mountains. The road remained mildly rocky and washed out in a few places as we dropped towards our junction with Hoveder Road. Just before the 35-mile mark, we reached the easier Hoveder Road and turned right to head east into the volcanic hills. Things remained a bit rough, but got progressively easier as we moved along. The road swung north and reached a high point for the day before crossing into La Paz County. La Paz is, of course, the namesake for the Arizona Peace Trail. The trail dropped a bit more before we reached our turnoff for the night. It was right around the 40-mile mark when we left the main road and headed to a large clearing where we would be camping for the evening. It was around 5 o'clock and the surrounding volcanic hills and desert were filled with a beautiful golden light. We immediately got to work on setting up camp. We leveled the Jeep the best we could, got our kitchen area and chairs set up, and popped open the tent. Within 15 minutes or so, camp was set up, and we sat for a few minutes to enjoy the tremendous view. This nice, wide-open area provided a glimpse of Coyote Peak and the Ronagras Plain just north of us, which we would be crossing tomorrow. This open and isolated campsite, which was surrounded by the Little Horn Mountains, was perfect. We soon got to work on dinner. Tonight's meal was going to be a special one. We fired up the stove and got the steaks cooking in the cast iron. Mashed potatoes soon followed, and eventually we got the creamed corn open. When everything was done, it looked incredible and tasted even better. We sat down to enjoy this marvelous dinner as the sun quickly set.
Darkness descended and the temperature dropped quickly. After mopping up some dishes and cleaning up camp, we got a fire started which we would enjoy for the next couple of hours. As the fire began to die shortly after 9, we got ready for bed and retreated into the tent for the first night of sleep along the AZPT trail. Even though we were in the desert, the low for the night was forecast to be in the mid to upper 30s. We bundled up and hit the sack. Today was a solid and productive day on the trail, covering about 40 miles on top of the highway drive to the start of the trail. Tomorrow would be an even busier day as we continued our journey north along the Arizona Peace Trail.
Next time, we continue northbound from the Little Horn Mountains as we cross through the expansive Palomas Plain. After crossing over I-10, we'll visit several historic town sites before making our way to Siloam for lunch. Outside of Siloam, we'll hit our connector through the Butler Valley and past the once top-secret Camp Bowes, before dropping into our next campsite at the ghost town of Swansea, over 80 miles away.